Earlier, there was talk about the burn. And we might add to that discussion that the purpose of practice and the burn is to be ultimately more used to oneself and one's family. That means one's immediate connections. Yeah. And from there, beyond that circle, out to the greater circle of beings. Okay. Now we are already wired into the circuit of all beings, cosmic circuit, let's say, cosmic circuit, no doubt. But we have a responsibility as awakening beings to be able to create healing. And that is through the process of burn, letting go of negative structures that obstruct the flow of the spiritual sound, the clear light, and so on. So this is heal, then heal some more, and then heal even more. 3 stages. Self-healing, family healing, and that includes close relatives, either blood or psychic connections. And then, through that, upgrading your capacity, then other peeps. And the process is beginning with a sense of personal responsibility, and then it evolves to interpersonal responsibility, and then transpersonal, impersonal responsibility. Then it's not about anybody, because everybody then is implied. Your being then has to do with everybody. That's like the master state. The master is nobody, and thus in the service of everybody, the same way, at the same time. And because people are differentiated versions of, let's say, human intelligence, human consciousness, or human karma, then there's always the fact of the master has to adapt, see, to the person or the beings and the cultural barriers that are more or less there to be processed somehow to create access to the being itself. So words are usually carefully chosen to cut through these barriers. So they go directly out to all beings from an impersonal level. But as a beginning practitioner, then you have to start this unfoldment process relative to learning how to heal your being, or learning how to enter healing as a form of practice. Healing. Healing body-mind, healing the causal mind, which is time mind. That means healing the memories. Memories of the past, far gone. See, no longer really valid except as a reference for examining certain karmic values. See, when we're talking about family, past, we're talking about childhood and parental relations relative to childhood, and respecting them and seeing that while we are served by parents, we are not the parents, we are not even the service, we are much more than that, in fact and in truth. We're not even a child, actually, but we are going through the evolutionary stage of a child, but it's not who we are, that's what our body's going through. Our minds don't necessarily have to go through that in all cases. Yeah. And so we evolve to a point where our heart is the same heart and other peeps. Yeah, actually. So that's part of the expansion of heart consciousness from self to self as other. Okay. And that's what we owe all peeps as detached Vairagi practitioners. That means detached from, appropriately detached, intelligently and even creatively detached from the suffering mechanisms of other peeps, although we are partly, let's say, responsible to heal all peeps who are obviously, inevitably, and in some cases, always suffering. Okay. When we get to the impersonal level, I'll be going from one to the other, get to the impersonal level, and the healing goes out to everybody. It's ongoing. And there's a doesn't matter aspect of it, doesn't matter. All beings get it. But as we get closer to our power sources, which means close relations, people who we draw the most power from and share the most power with, then it becomes an issue of, in terms of practice, are you allowing past karma to stand in the way of your practice? Are beings allowing past karma, sour grape karma, or happy days karma, to get in the way of the practice? Because both of those are really on the same seesaw. Happy days are not really better than sour grape days, bad days, say, sad days. They're the same. They're both obstructions at a certain point. Okay? They're not clear. Positive, more healing, so we favor that. So there's more healing there. But the healing we're talking about from the heart is free of qualifications and conditions. Okay? It's impersonal healing. It's beyond the issues, say, of particularization and preference. So we need to go through preference, see, and get to the cosmic level of the heart as a bigger, let's say, space, a bigger love, a bigger embrace of, let's say, the healing itself, healingness. Okay? Now, forgiveness, in terms of peeps who have been more or less at the dark or sad side of the, let's say, the balance, the underdog, if you want to call it the underdog, the victim. Okay? In practice, you have to pick yourself up. You have to immediately eradicate, purify the whole notion of victimization, because you're on a different level. You have to be dealing with grace as part of the practice. And when you're a victim, you're coming in with an assumption, an identificational program of limitation that makes you already less. You can't be less to get the greatest. You can't be less. You can't be pretending to be less, which it is. It's a pretense formulation of who you are. So you have to abandon those ideas and programs to recover what is true identity, in a sense. And that means the original, getting back to original spiritual being, and let's say data regarding that your living being is a spirit soul. It's an awareness, a living awareness, living intelligence. Enveloped in, by way of karmic agreement, or embodied in the flesh and its components, its inner dimensions. Borrowed, always borrowed. Not true to who one is, but what one has to use in order to communicate to other beings, and then ultimately, as a practitioner, serve in the healing process of all of life, as much as possible. And it takes time. It may take lifetimes to get to that place. But getting back to the personal relative to karma and family, and healing the lines, healing the relations, it's a two-way karma, but without expectations. So you have to put it out there, because you have to go beyond barriers, and self levels of communication become barriers in the beginning, and people stay there in the barriers of other peeps, and thus make their barriers or resistances one's own barriers and resistances, when that's not good practice. Because there are no barriers and resistances in the presence of infinite space. There are none. See, because this thing that we're calling the light or the heart is all permeating, all pervasive. It's not about matter. It's beyond matter, and without it, matter couldn't exist. It's the fundamental essence that enables everything to appear and show up in form and so on and so forth. So it's all pervasive. It's the subtlest spirit energy, the life energy. See, so the healing is very important to keep in mind because people need it. People need, even though we're saying, you're practicing this, you're not getting verification that they're getting your healing. But you don't want that. You don't need that. The fact that you are healing means your healing is going out to all beings. It's verification enough for all of us. So when we practice being the healing feeling of already healed, okay? Already free. Okay? Already what? Gone. Already gone beyond the limitations of other peeps, the preferences of karma, self-karma, and all concerns at the personal level. So you have to heal, keep the healing happening. And Hugh is key to this. The exhalation is key to it, because it is biologically the expression of the body of release and liberation of what ails it. It's liberation already. Breathing is liberation. And inhalation is the intake of grace, opportunity to exhale. That means give back, sacrifice, self, heartfulness, saying, okay, I'm part of the universe, it's a heart being, I'm a servant of mankind, I'm here to help it. See? And so it's important to understand some things that are like very mysterious, that there's nothing to hold against anybody. See? Forgiveness, I brought that up. Say, no, you love doesn't mean you have to involve yourself with the peeps, but you have to just have an open heart to get the most out of what your heart is really about. Your heart is not your mind. It's huge. It's a huge thing, but the mind is a certain kind of imposition of karmic belief systems, see? Maya, illusion, over the preciousness of the heart. And most people don't even think of the heart until it wears out or it starts to show up as a problem. But the heart is like a crucial, vital organism that we have. It's very quiet. You hardly hear it ticking, but it's keeping you going for a time. So, understanding that there is a factor of time in this, then you have to practice even more so. So you have the very dimensions, the very fabric of the universe reminding you that you have to practice now. It's not something anybody has any time to lose about. Because your spiritual purpose is to enter the heart and to love from the heart. That means without peeps and without interactions, without games, without negotiations, without programs, without anything, for no reason at all. You have to love because it's the nature of the heart. And that's what you need to realize, that you are the heart itself. See? That's a heart realization. Practice. We can also say that brings us, when we're talking about the impersonal functioning of the open breathing heart in this sense, then we're talking about compassion. Selfless compassion means you're not doing it for returns particularly, you're doing it because it's part of the healing, the good feelingness and the expansion of your consciousness. See, to give is to expand. And I'm not saying you have to give your property away, because that's not real giving. That's kind of like a poor man's giving. So, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to give you a couple of erasers, and then you expect the heart to expand. The heart still wonders, like, A couple of erases. I think you can do better than that, Mac. You got to give a lot more than that. And so the healing and the sort of gesture of givingness has to be psychic givingness, liberational in nature. See, big, huge. Worth calling it a heart. Worth calling it the grace and space of the heart. It's worth calling it these huge ideas, concepts, these majestic sort of, principles of reality. And so this is what practice is, transcending then the limitations and preoccupations of self-nature into heart nature, into compassion and into mercy, all forgiveness. And so whether we have family that likes us or not, as practitioners, as heart beings in training, we have to send the love out to the whole family. Because there's a spiritual side of this. There's a power side of this. That means a psychically significant side of it that has nothing to do with personalities and the politics of personality. And when we understand that masters of realization enter the selfless condition of lovingness, not just loving so-and-so, over so-and-so, and all of that, which is the beginning. But not the end. The end is just being love, period. Which could be also the beginning practice for peeps. That's very bold in nature. Be love itself. Very important state to be in resonance with, whether it's your ultimate goal or the basis. So all practices are working towards that. And to speak of the final ultimate goal is very, I guess you might say, meaningless to peeps who are just getting into it. Because they're dealing with their personal problems. They're dealing with their self-enclosure. They're, self-casketed. So the karma. Much less radiance than it takes to be a practitioner. In the give and take of light relative to the condition of the world and the condition of, let's say, the universe. And not to speak of the condition of humanity, which needs the beingness of love more now than ever before in the history of mankind. There's no doubt about that. So to forgive your relatives, impersonally, straight up, clear the slate of guilt on both ends. Tell the relative not to feel bad. Everything is good as it should be. It's good as it should be. Already forgiven, that means already healed. You keep moving. And spread that kind of presence of practice with other peeps. I mean, not anybody, sort of without discretion. But where there are or would be or could be meaningful communication with peeps, and say, yeah, that's what the practice is. Heart expansion. Say, heart opening. Okay. But smart heart. See, we're not talking about, again, stupid heart love. No, true heart love. It's the love of the masters. And being so sensitive and clear, you can read who it is that needs what or nothing from you. Because it's not about entanglement. It's not about getting involved in complications with peeps because of their emotions. That's not the domain of the practitioner. Now, we inevitably, because we're involved in human nature, have to deal with emotional issues. But how you dance with that, how you deal with that, how you process that, How you put it to rest is what determines whether or not a person is practicing properly. So yeah, I'm dealing with this, but I'm putting it to rest. See, I'm going through it, I'm bringing it up, and then it's going to be put down, say, to peace. Right? And then you work on other things, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about burn, then bringing burn into it, we're talking about the need to assume the non-existence of your self-programming, your limitations. Okay. Burn then is the awareness as fire. Okay. Awareness as fire. And if we're talking awareness as fire, we're talking about egolessness. Okay. Beyond egolessness. Okay. That means open-hearted communication, smart heart. Okay. Big heart, compassion. Now these are words. They're very symbolic. They could be very confusing for certain peeps, but not for practitioners. Okay? This pertains to the actual evolutionary expansion of intelligence and heart awareness, which are similar, okay? And growth in a spiritual sense. Hence, we call it spiritual unfoldment in general. Yeah. And it's infinite. It's not like, oh, well, you reached that. Did you reach that state yet? Are you there at that state? And the person would say, well, maybe, maybe not, but there's no state to reach. And it's infinite expansion. You know, again, it's like, just so much. How much? How much? That much? I don't think. Is this much it? I don't think so. See, there's no measurement of what it is that is it. So mastery then, using it as a symbolic sort of window, is no limit, no limits. The mastery, an ongoing expansion into the infinite, respecting and worshipping the infiniteness of practice in life all the time, and freeing the heart of the burden of unfinished emotional business with peeps, family or friends, and whatever it is, whatever it's been, let it go. It's not about ignoring it. No, it's about going beyond it. It's not ignoring things. It's not repressing anything. It's just being beyond it. Okay? Okay. Any comments? Love always you. See, these are familiar themes, but regarding the creative process, then familiar themes have to be restructured, see, to have more significance and relevance based upon the time they are required to show up, see, as revelation, impact, wake-up calls, and so on. See. So you've heard this before, but you didn't hear it this way. Now you can hear it better. See? That's part of the master's function, is to continually address and readdress issues with different peeps at different times, and each time bringing the appropriate amount of light and insight necessary to keep it in a sacred way. See? So it's the same thing said differently, which means a different teaching. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a different song. Mm-hmm. Same key. Yeah. Similar this, similar that, different tune. Okay. Slight variation can make it a different tune. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is the key to practice. Yeah. And coming back to the practice, saying, no, I didn't gain much that I perceived, not knowing that when you sit, you're gaining. Just to sit down, you're already there, but you don't know it, see? See, the ultimate goal is to acknowledge and then participate in nothingness. So you're already being in nothingness, but not 100%, maybe 3%. And it is clear that the body is more in nothingness, left to itself, than the mind, the untrained mind, the unawakened mind, let's say, the distracted mind, the busyness mind. Say. So to bring from the inside of practice out this sense of fulfillment already, but you're already nothingness. You have karma, and no problem. You're going to bring your nothingness to your karma. That's your gift. That's your purpose. Is to bring this nothingness of the heart's expansion, infiniteness of spirit, using different languages from different schools, to participate in humanity, but not at the darker end of the spectrum. Not as victim, but as a healer. An awakening healer. Say, oh yeah, that's negative stuff, that's positive stuff. Right? Bypass both. And then you are ultimately positive because you're neither and you're not polarized. You've transcended polarities. No. No. We are neither. We are both and neither at the same time. We are a paradox. We have to realize that in order to move through the time-space worlds with minimal damage to ourselves and our people. And one of the keys is compassionate forgiveness, which is really just giving people space and giving them their lives back. Say, no, I'm not holding anything against you, and you shouldn't hold anything against me because we can do better than that. See, we can be in proper resonance with the universe and having a good day and a good night, even under the worst of times, because the worst of times doesn't change your relationship to the universe. It tests your relationship with the rest of the universe. It tests your understanding. But it can't test your realization. And realization means it is reality. It's not theory. It is reality beyond question, without a doubt. And realization means already 100% real. Clear, true, done, perfect, masterfully, accomplished. Yeah.